Hey, good afternoon and welcome to our Facebook Live, our WeatherWorks Facebook Live that we do each week. We're here at the KSL studios. I'm Kevin Eubank and I'm joined here with Dave McCann, who's a KSL main anchor, evening anchor. Thanks for being with us.
It's my pleasure.
What's really cool about this is we understand how many folks are still at home in self-isolation or self-quarantine. Kids are home from school. Teachers and parents are finding ways to be creative about education. And one thing that we do here at KSL often is bring people in for tours. They come to see the station. They want to see how things work, what goes on behind the cameras, talk to our people that are working here about their different jobs. Well, that's not possible right now because of the situation. So we wanted to take one day a week and turn it into a career workshop where you get to ask questions about a specific career that we have here at KSL. And so today, I decided that I wanted to feature our anchors, and Dave is one of the very best we have, and so I invited Dave to be a part of this. If you want to ask questions about being an anchor here at KSL Television, what education it takes, what kind of skill set there is, experience, work history, you can go ahead and put it right in the comments, and our producer will then feed those questions to us here in the next little bit, and we'll be able to answer those questions. So if you've got something, add them right into the comments section, and we'll be able to reply to you. But Dave, you're a Utah-grown boy. You were born and raised in Orem, Utah. Is that right?
Yeah.
Grew up there with your siblings?
All went to Orem High School, all 10 of us McCann kids. A lot of us graduated from BYU, and then I was in Las Vegas for 20 years after a short stint at Good Morning America, which kind of launched things for me, and then I've been here for 8 years.
That's awesome. So when you were a little boy, you watched KSL Television, like the rest of us.
And then MASH at 10:35.
Isn't that true? So what led you into saying, I want to be a journalist?
You know, I always wanted to do this. My mom tells me the story. When I was 4, I said that I wanted to be a newscaster, sportscaster, more of a sportscaster. And I just never varied from it through writing for the elementary school little newspaper to I got a job at the Provo Daily Herald writing sports when I was 14. And so I was still a paper boy when I was delivering papers with my own articles in them.
Oh, that's
awesome. I thought,
awesome.
hey, there's a great story in C7 or whatever. I didn't get any more tips for some reason from the people I delivered to.
Yeah,
but, and then involved in radio when I was 16. And after my mission, I came to BYU, and they have a great program that if you're interested in this, they can help train you to get a job.
Sure.
And I got a job at Good Morning America before my senior year, and then a job in Las Vegas, and then this one. A lot of little things in between, but the circle isn't very, it doesn't go around too far between BYU, Las Vegas, KSL.
So go back a little bit. You talked about how at a young age you decided, or you kind of started this track, but one word that you mentioned multiple times was it required writing.
Yeah.
You almost at a very early age, when you have that idea of I want to deliver content, you pretty quickly learn no one's going to give you that content to deliver, and you have to be responsible for doing that. So a huge part of your job is good writing.
Yeah, absolutely, and it goes to everything, even a textbook. A textbook where the writing is good keeps a kid interested.
Sure.
And then we learn things from it. But it's the great creative thing that sometimes in TV is lost because things are so quick and short and fast and in a little box, and we move on to the next story. But when you get into the newspaper, we have a little more space, and you can expand on a thought and learn how to project a thought, whether it's a sports feature or a news story, with the idea of I got to make this interesting, based on facts, and fair, no matter who I'm talking about.
Sure.
And I find that that's still where the fun is. When we sit down to do a longer piece on KSL, the fun part is, how am I going to write this? Because it's all writing. When you look at movies and sitcoms and things like that, why do we quote Seinfeld all the time, even though it's been off the air forever? Because the writing spoke to us, and we remember it. And a good movie is still a good movie 30 years later because of the story and how the story was written, even though the Star Wars graphics from the first movie compared to the last are night and day, but we're still drawn to the first movie because of the story and how it was written.
So tell me a little bit about, so for all the kids watching, for the parents, the teachers, others, you just heard him describe is that the discipline of good writing, which is started very early in elementary school,
right,
and then honed through junior high and high school and college. There's lots of different disciplines that can go down, right? You describe one, which is the journalistic side, which is really taking some big complex ideas and getting those into concise, specific, informative snippets that you can deliver in a newscast.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do when you're dealing with a really complex issue. And then the opposite side of that is when it takes on a longer form, you need to be able to adapt and have correct grammar, you've got to have spelling, all those skills that go along with that. How do you practice that? So for the kids at home that maybe they aren't the best writers, or maybe their papers, they hate English, that's their worst subject. What can they do to improve their writing?
Well, it's basic communication. It's like us talking back and forth, only let's say we were texting or emailing. How am I going to communicate my emotions or what I'm trying to say to you through words? Now, a lot of times we get into trouble with texting because we'll send a message that I think is a certain message, and then you'll read it and see that I used all caps, and now everyone's mad at me. You think I'm yelling at you. So it is so basic, the basic fundamentals of you start your day and you're talking to your mom or dad at the breakfast table, and let's just say we're verbally communicating, but what if you couldn't? And it is so basic and simple. And probably the best example is bad writing and how awful it is and how hard it is to communicate a basic, simple thing because we chose the wrong words, we chose the wrong sentence structure, and we are conveying the wrong message. And it's simple. With writing, you write it down and you look at it, and there it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we say stuff, we can't take it back after it comes out. Or when we tweet something, we can't bring it back in. But writing, you can sit there and you can look at it and you go, you know what, I'm on a deadline, but in these 25 seconds, this is how I'm going to write this story. Is that what I want to convey? Is it accurate? Is it fair? Is it truthful? And have I taken all the big words out so I can actually say it?
Nice. Well, that's not always true. He jokes about that all the time, that he takes out the big words. But I think a huge part in writing, what I've witnessed in our newsroom, is it doesn't matter what level of writing you get to, there's always going to be an editor, there's always going to be a supervising producer, there's always going to be someone that wants to look over that. And that's a healthy thing to have.
Yeah.
I think being willing to put your paper out there, to put your writing out there for others to critique, can be one of the best ways to learn how to improve your writing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and then you develop a skill of what it feels like to be critiqued.
Yeah.
And that also is a skill of, all right, you know what, I can handle some constructive criticism to help make me better, when our initial reaction is, what do you mean that doesn't make sense?
Right.
You know, I worked hard on that.
Sure. Being humble enough to get the feedback.
So you learn the two things, and if you can put them together, I want to be a good writer, but I also want to know if I'm missing it. And a good teacher, I had great teachers at Orem High School, which helped kind of guide me along, and at BYU. And even today, when we have supervisors and people around us that can say, hey, you know what? I don't think that's how you meant to say that. Yeah. Here's how you could say it instead. And we're constantly evolving so that when you watch the 10 o'clock news, in about 90 seconds, we're going to throw 4 stories at you. We want you to be able to understand them in minimal words, but in a way where you go, oh, that's what's going on in Kearns, okay, or that's what's going on in the Jordan School District, or that's what's going on at BYU. In a rapid fire, hey, we know we only have your attention for a couple of minutes each time.
That's awesome. We're going to talk more with Dave about other aspects of his job. We talked about writing, but there's a lot more that he does. But we want to get to your questions as well. So our producer, Keith Merrill, has been monitoring the Facebook page. Keith, are there any questions that parents or teachers or students have been asking that we can answer for them?
Yes. Andres Diaz asked Dave, do you see yourself leaving for another gig, or is this the perfect job for you?
This is a great job for anybody at KSL, especially doing what we do. And I have a great job at BYU calling ball games, and I think that's probably one of the greatest jobs for anyone who wants to do that. So this is just where we're at, and we love it, and we'll do it for as long as they let us do it. What's different about KSL than other places, and I was in Las Vegas for 20 years, and my colleague Mike Hedrick was in Denver and was here and a couple other places. This is like, I describe it as playing for the Yankees. When you play for the Yankees, you're not looking to go play for somebody else. Everything's kind of led up to playing here, but when you play for the Yankees, you got to be able to catch, you got to be able to throw, you got to be able to hit. So we work on that while we're in the Yankee uniform. Of course, they haven't won a World Series for a while, so maybe I should pick the Cubs. Let's say you want to play for the Cubs. But that's it. This is a place that we don't come here to practice. We practiced other places. This is where we come to execute.
Andres, that's an awesome question.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you asking it. And again, we're very fortunate to work for this company and in this market. A lot of folks who've worked at this TV station, not just on television that you see, but for every one person you see on TV, there's 7 to 8 people that you don't see that are outside that are doing all sorts of other things. A lot of them have come to this company from lots of other places around the country because they want to be here and to work for this company in this market.
And they don't leave.
No, they stay. That's a great question.
When I got this job, I had lunch with Bruce Lindsay, and Bruce and Dick Norris were the evening anchors for 55 years. I hadn't hired another evening anchor for 55 years. And I'm talking to Bruce, and Bruce asked me if I was nervous, and this was in 2012. And I said, yeah, I am. He goes, how come? I said, because I was riding a big wheel around my neighborhood when I was 7 years old, when you were hired to do this job. And that's how long he was here. And he goes, well, you're not riding the big wheel anymore, are you? And I go, no, I'm not. So he goes, so it's really not that big of a deal. And I thought, I guess it isn't. But this is a place where people like to come and work for their whole careers because of the environment. And Carol McKeet is a great example.
You bet. Thank you. That's a great question. Keith, any other questions that we can answer?
Yes, I'm going to ask you 2 quick ones here. Daryl asks how long you've been working here, and Gus asks, how free are you to express your ideas?
That's a great question. You've been here for?
8 years.
8 years. I've been here for 13 years. How free are we to express our ideas? Well, I'm a meteorologist, so I get to say whatever I want, right or wrong, right? Isn't that how that works? No, we're in the public arena. So obviously we not only represent ourselves, but we represent our station and our ownership. And so we absolutely choose carefully the words that we use because we know that it doesn't just reflect on us, it reflects on others. But I've never felt stifled or boxed in about what we could say.
No, there's certain things you avoid, like politics and things that are lightning rods for one side or the other that are divisive. We just keep those personal preferences to ourselves. And you know what? Eventually, as you watch us long enough, things come out. You can tell that your interests are certain things.
Sure.
But when we deliver the evening news, we try to be fair and accurate. And I remember one time I smiled during a President Trump story, and a bunch of people got bent out of shape that I was pro-Trump. And then you do just the opposite, and you hear from the other group, so you realize, you know what, there's no winning here on this. Just line up and play it fair. And if you want to know our personal opinions, although I am quite vocal that this is the BYU seat and Deanie's Utah seat is over here, and we make that completely clear. But outside of that, personal things we keep personal, professional things we hope to do every day.
Yeah. Gus, that was a great question. Keith, any more?
Rhonda asks, how do you break into the business?
That's a great question, Dave. If you had a young person or even someone who's in high school or college that's starting to finish their education, the career path for you was broadcast journalism through Brigham Young University.
Yeah.
And there are other paths that you can go, but for the most part, a journalism degree is about the entrance into the business, isn't it, for this part?
It's important to get trained. And along the way of being trained, you find out if you really want to do it. Because this job isn't for everybody, and the hours aren't for everybody. And we've all had to adjust our family life and things to accommodate when we do the news in the morning and at night. Why do we do it at those 2 times? Because that's when people are home. I'd love to do the news at 2 o'clock and go home at 4, but no one's there at 2 o'clock. And so you learn as you get trained that, hey, do I love this or not? And do I love it enough that I'm willing to pay the price to go to a small market or a small paper and a small salary and work my way that way? The answer is, if you want to do it, you can, and you can be successful, and you can have a wonderful life. The key is in high school is to take writing classes. I had a radio station at Orem High School, KOHS. I did everything at KOHS, music, writing the sports, news, or whatever. Everything I did there as a high school junior, I do today at KSL. So that prepared me more than any other class or any other course when we were just messing around in high school thinking it was a fun class. And all of a sudden you're going, hey, you can get trained for your entire profession in high school if you find something you like and allows you to sharpen some skills, and then a college education or a trade that can help you hone in is beneficial, and you need some good fortune and timeliness and all of those things.
Yeah.
I think a few years after I graduated from BYU in my graduating class, I was the only one still in the business.
Oh, really?
Because it was hard. There were sacrifices. There were small markets. People were going, you know what? I'm going into advertising. I didn't love this as much as I thought I would. But going to college, for the most part, will go, hey, here's what it is. Here's what a deadline's like. Here's what hours are like. Are you sure you want to do it? And it's better to make that decision then than 10 years down the road when you have 3 kids and you're trying to balance everything and all of a sudden, hey, I don't like this career anymore, and you got to change.
Yeah, and Rhonda, to answer your question too, excuse me, practice on tape. If you're going to be in the broadcasting business, make a tape, or have the individual you're talking about make a tape. A sample of your writing is another thing. So when you go from market to market, they want to see you. They want to see you on TV, or they want to see you doing the presentation. And then if you're a writer, like the journalist, they want to see your writing sample. How do you write? How do you edit? How do you go through that process? So those are all good, maybe key points to enter in.
And it can start super early. I remember when I was a little kid, when I was 8, 7, 8, 9, and I had an electric football set. And now people are playing with the games and stuff, but I had an electric football set, and I would save my paper out money, buy teams, and I would play them on my board, and I would be the crowd, the player, the announcers, the booth in New York, and I'd have this whole thing going on. And I got a refrigerator box that I cut out, and so I could have a Houston Astrodome inside, and I hung a light from the thing, and I was in heaven. And when the game was over, if my brother didn't throw a pillow over to knock it because I was playing too late and I was too loud, I'd write up a story and go up and read it to my dad. And he was very patient in listening to that. But all of that stuff I did as an 8-year-old, I do at LaVell Edwards Stadium. And it's just funny how you're like, when you have a thing you enjoy doing, if you can find a way to get paid to do it, it's not like going to work. It's getting paid to do what you love, as opposed to go to work and just stare at the clock and go, I can't wait till 5 o'clock so I can go do what I want.
Sure. That's awesome. Keith, any more questions?
Shari says, go Tigers.
Go Tigers for Orem Tigers.
The Golden Tigers.
And Christy asks, how do you hold your composure when you're reporting tragic stories?
That's a really good question. There are a lot of days where there's some really, really heavy news that comes across your desk. How is that? I mean, you're a father, you're a grandfather, you're a son, you're a brother, you're all these things. You see that go forward in life with all that happens in the news. How do you manage that?
You know, it's really interesting. You learn through time how to do it because it's not a natural thing of being able to process and kind of just set this story apart from real life. And when I was in Las Vegas, our son got out of the house and nearly drowned in the pool next door. And I gave him CPR to resuscitate him before the ambulance got there, and it turned out okay. But when I do a story about a drowning or near drowning, it takes you right back to that spot where you know the panic, you know the fear, you know my whole life would have changed if this would have happened instead of this, and then all of a sudden that's very, very real. And so you really have to, you just have to put it away and know that I'm going to read this 30-second story or 2-minute story, and it's awful, and I've been there. But I also I've got to deliver this story so that that folks know what's going on, knowing that there's a family there that has been devastated or is in this process, is in their own tragedy, and you want to be sensitive. And you know, that's not a time to joke around. It's not a time to have a smile on your face, even though if you're an optimistic guy, you got to climb into the moment and go, hey, this is a sad story. And in 2 minutes, we're going to tell a story where we can laugh and joke around and toss to you for the forecast. But time helps you kind of go through the process of, I'm looking at the rundown and I go, there's no way I can make Deanie laugh in these first 4 minutes, even off camera, because I don't want to put her in a situation where she's coming from, I said something funny, and now all of a sudden she's on camera reading about a homicide.
Sure.
But that can happen so easy in this business in live TV. So you really kind of have to look at the rundown and go, okay, here's what we have going on, and these are heavy stories, and down here are not. So if I have something witty that I think I'm going to say, I got to say it down here, because up here, this is true life and death.
Yeah. And I think one thing for you at home or you on our Facebook Live to realize is all the same emotions that you're going through, they go through. We all go through. We just have to process it at a different time and place. And so many a time, as I've been doing weather off on a corner of the set, I'll see them after the story's been read or in a commercial break, really see them process the emotion of what they've just done or what they've said or what they've read. So don't mistake the professionalism that you guys do on air for the lack of feeling, because you definitely, I've watched, it's all real, it's all there.
And we have kids, and you know, when you're doing a story about child abuse, and there are a lot of them, unfortunately, you know, some of those just flat out blow your mind, and you're like, what in the world? And you have all those feelings because you live it. You know, you have kids that you do anything for, and we've had some horrible stories the last couple of years where you take them home. I have a 45-minute drive home before I get to Provo, and that's a process time. By the time I get home, I've kind of, you know, but we live all that stuff. And the difference between someone else's tragedy and your own tragedy is the personal connection. And it's something's happening to a family in West Valley. I don't know them. I'll probably never meet them. And so I've got to do this story with respect to them, but I have no emotional connection to them. However, if it's somebody in your family, and we all have those situations in our family, we're completely in. And when you read an obituary of strangers, you look and see how old they are and what happened and this and that. And then you see your father's obituary, and then it's just takes you in. And so some of our stories where there's an emotional disconnect because I don't know them allows us to get through it a little bit, as opposed to I'm going to read a sad story about my nephew, and I probably wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Keith, last question. Do we have anything else?
I'm just going to ask you personally, how does your family feel about you being on TV and just your job in general?
How does yours feel?
I grew up this way. So my father, who did weather in Utah for 40 years, that's just how I was born and raised. Now my wife, she had to adapt to the lifestyle. There's no question that it's difficult. We work nights, and so being out of the home in the evening has its challenges. I live very close, so I'm able to go home in between for dinner. So I leave here at about 7 o'clock. I go home between 7:30 and 9, and I get to spend time with my kids. But as Dave mentioned, he's got a 45-minute drive to Provo, and it's just not feasible to be able to go home during the evening. So it's an adjustment for sure. Being in the public eye is definitely has its challenges. My father used to teach me that, listen, you better be the same on air as the same in public. And it better be authentic, because people can see it, they can sense it. You are no different than anyone else, so don't take special privileges or treatment, or don't act that way. I've walked into a restaurant before and they've said, hey, let's get you to the front of the line because we know you're tight on dinner, and you got to say, no, thank you, I'll wait with the rest of them, because that's the point, is you are just like everybody else. This is a job. This isn't anything other than what we chose to do for a living. What about you?
My mom's favorite quote, it's nice to be important, it's more important to be nice. And that has played out through all of our lives. And our kids have grown up with it. The beauty of, I have 3 daughters that live in Logan with their families. And so I don't get to Logan as often as I'd like, especially see the grandkids, but they can see me every night.
Sure.
And that's one of the advantages. You turn the news on and now I'm in the house. And the grandkids know me that way, and those kind of things. So there's that side of it. But the challenging thing is when things happen, we just act, and if we're at a family party and now we need to be here, we just come here. So that kind of owns us a little bit, but you can have a nice life, and you can do a lot of wonderful things, meet a lot of great people, have fascinating coworkers. We have a fortunate that around this desk we're all friends, and we don't think terribly different from each other. And our lives away from here are all very similar, and so it's unlike any place in the country, and that makes it fun to come to work, because you're coming to work with your friends, even if it's the 4th of July or Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve, as we've done many. But I always tell my kids, I said, well, if you decide there comes a time when you want to eat and you don't want clothing, you don't want a roof on your head, then let me know and I'll go do something else. And they've chosen those 3 every time. Yeah.
Well, you're great to come and be with us today.
Thank you.
Each week we actually do a weather experiment as part of our WeatherWorks interactive program on Wednesdays. So for teachers and students and parents who want to participate, we'll be back next Wednesday. On Fridays we do our career profile, where we talk to different individuals. Today it was Dave McCann. Dave, in closing, what's the very best part of your job?
The best part of this job, I think, is, well, there's two parts. One is that we get to participate in everyone's life. We hopefully become part of your family, and we all grow up together. We go through hard times together, and we go through really fun times together. We go through this temporary 9-game losing streak together to the Utes, but we get to do these things together, and people get to know us and kind of graft us in, and it's unlike anything that I've known. And then the challenge is every time the red light comes on, and we've been doing this for a long, long time. I was in Vegas for 20 years. So every time that red light comes on, you have the opportunity to do it right or mess it up. Yep. And that's what keeps it fresh, because we all want to do our best. And you don't want to stumble and fumble, which inspires preparation. And people go, I could never do this job. Well, sure you could, if you're prepared to do it. Just like anything else, like being a school teacher.
Sure.
As we're finding out, I couldn't be a school teacher at the house, but I have no choice. We have to do it. But I like that. I like the challenge of freshness because of, hey, look, the red light's on. There's no takebacks. And then I also love the we're stronger together. Let's grow up together. Let's have good times together. And this job allows you and me to connect to 3 million people in the state, and most of which we'll never get a chance to meet personally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey guys, thanks so much. Dave, thanks for taking some time to be with us. It's called Facebook Live for a reason. It's been live, but if you'd like to leave your comments, we'll hop on and we'll be answering questions and comments throughout the evening and through the next couple of days. But we really appreciate you joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next week on Wednesday at 3 o'clock for our KSL Interactive WeatherWorks experiment. Guys, thanks a lot for being with us.